Welcome back to the booth, my friends. My name's Riley Knight, joined by Paul Cheon, and the party don't stop. We're going to head down to the feature match area and check in with some of those players you saw on the screen just now, Paul. We are going to start off with, rather than a win and in, a lose and out. A couple of 9-3 players there. They're playing for the tournament lives here.
Yeah, definitely. We got William Jensen going up against Alex Majlaton, and William Jensen sitting at 9-3 with his mono blue tempo deck. Let's see if you can keep it going for Team Ultimate Guard Pro.
That's right. Let's head down there right here, right now. It's time for the next round of Standard here at Mythic Championship 1 here in Cleveland. What's up, nerds? Welcome to the feature match area here in Cleveland here at the Mythic Championship #1. And you're with me, Riley Knight in the booth, joining me, Paul Cheon from Wizards R&D. Good afternoon, Paul. Great to have you along today. On the screen now you can see our two players we're going to kick things off with. William Huey Jensen, a world champion and all-around great bloke. Probably items number 1 and 2 on his CV, I would imagine. He's up against Alex Majlaton. Both these guys at 9-3. Jensen on mono blue tempo and Majlaton on Gruul aggro. Paul, this is not a clan. This is not a guild that we get to see too much of at the top tables of Magic, despite some enormously powerful cards in green and red. I'm excited to see exactly what Majlaton's getting up to here.
I'm also really excited to see. I thought it was going. Oh, never mind. I thought it was going to be just a. I thought it was going to be Gruul aggro,
like
with
actual
green
Gruul
cards.
aggro.
But it looks like it's a mono red deck because, of course, we see that runaway Steamkin on the battlefield, signaling that this is likely a mono red deck with access to some green cards.
I mean, technically speaking, and is it not so, Paul Cheon, that being technically correct is the best kind of correct?
Right.
Technically speaking, it's Gruul aggro.
Yeah.
It does have a couple of green sideboard cards.
Right, but at its heart, it is in fact a mono red deck.
We're going to live by the spirit of the law rather than the letter. Alex Majlaton on mono red aggro. You see, we do have Stomping Grounds. We do have Rootbound Crags. That's enabling Cindervines, Collision Colossus out of the board. But ultimately, yes, indeed, Paul, we're looking at a straight-up mono red list. So it's a battle as old as time itself. Red versus blue, Pyroblast versus Hydroblast, and Jensen off to a flyer here. Miscloaked Herald into Curious Obsession. Curious Obsession has been getting it done for a long time in Standard, but look how curious this little merfolk is. Lucky it's not a cat, otherwise it'd be very dead. No, it'd still have 7 lives, excuse me. But still, Jensen firing on all cylinders. And let's see what the next trick up his sleeve is here. A Terramander back to Majlaton, and Jensen pulling ahead on cards, Paul, but how does this board look?
Well, the thing is, while Jensen's getting further and further ahead on cards, the red deck is able to close out games pretty quickly with a bunch of burn spells. So it looks like, it looks like that's what Alex is trying to do here. He has run out a Goblin Chain Whirler, but William Jensen actually using Dive Down to save his Terramander. It is now a 1/4, but the coast is clear for Alex Majlaton to use a burn spell to get that Miscloaked Herald off the board, as it's currently a 3/3. And keep in mind, Alex Majlaton currently has a 4/4 Runaway Steamkin, so we can cash in those 3 counters for 3 red mana. And if you see there, William Jensen going for the block there.
Yep.
The reason why is now Alex can no longer cast a spell with using the mana from the Runaway Steamkin, because if he does, it will lose those 3 counters and have 1 damage placed on it.
So sick. So sick from William Jensen there. He doesn't miss a trick, and as a result, Majlaton does have the shock, and he's able to kill that Miscloaked Herald, but Jensen is just not falling from Majlaton's tricks there, and that exchange just showed the level that we're on.
Right.
Like I'm on level 2, 1 probably base B1, B2. I'm somewhere.
And
you're ahead of that, but these guys are on another level.
But look what just happened. Alex cast a Viashino Pyromancer at the expense of a Runaway Steamkin. So he did, in fact, lose the Steamkin. He definitely did not want to do that, because 4/4 is slightly better than a 2/1 there on the battlefield. However, he still has a ton of pressure there. William did use that dive down to protect the Terramander, but by using that, he didn't have the mana to save his Miscloaked Herald from the shock that Alex Majlaton cast that turn. So things are rough. If William Jensen can't put something like a Tempest Djinn onto the battlefield this turn, Alex can just win the game with the creatures on the battlefield.
So in hand here for Jensen, going to kick things off with an opt. Merfolk Trickster, the only form of pressure in the hand of the American Hall of Famer. Member of the Magic Pro League as well, as you can see on your screen down the bottom left there. Very excited to see exactly what these, what the Pro League gets up to later in the year. But right here and right now, it's all about the Mythic Championship. And Majlaton and Jensen, as we mentioned before, at 9 and 3 apiece, they're going to have to dig deep here if they want their career to continue in this tournament at least. Yeah,
and I will say this, you know, oh, look at this. The old 2-for-1 here. Alex not flinching, being happy with that trade with the Trickster, but William needing to try to save one of his creatures, chose to go for a dive down to protect the Trickster, but then, of course, Alex had the shock. So, yeah, this is very, very close to over. And take a look at Alex's hand, too. He's got a lightning strike that he's just firing off at William Jensen because he's got an experimental frenzy in hand as well.
He wants to get that hand nice and empty so he can slam down the frenzy and start to get even further ahead on cards here. He's ahead on board, he's ahead on cards, and right now it's looking very good for Alex Majlaton. William Jensen kind of getting the short end of the stick with some of the deals that he's made here, and as a result he's going to pack him up. But Majlaton just was able to leverage the cards that he had to really run rings around Jensen. Finding good spots to deploy his removal and preventing Jensen from really getting that. We talked about the snowball effect of mono blue last round, Paul, and that snowball didn't really get too far down the hill before Majlaton came at it with a flamethrower.
Right, and not only that, when you play against the red deck, at least against the mono-white aggressive decks, they don't have a lot of removal, right? They have some baffling hands, maybe a few tribunals. But when you play the mono-red deck, you have access to shock, lightning strike, and even sometimes an active Wizard's Lightning on top of that with the Fanatical Firebrand if it doesn't attack. There's just so many different ways to kind of stop that draw of one-mana flyer into Curious Obsession. And not only that, even if you get to do your thing like William Jensen was able to do, you can still outrace them by just putting a lot of pressure on the battlefield.
Just pure aggression. And that's what we saw there from Majlaton. My friends, we're going to go to a break. There'll be more aggression from Majlaton, I would imagine, after this. So stick with us. We'll see you back here live from Cleveland after this. Here, welcome back to the feature match area here at Mythic Championship 1 in Cleveland. We're going to go to one of our back tables, quick live look-in while Table 1 is shuffling up, getting ready for their second game. Marcio Carvalho, Michael Bonder. We've seen both of these players in the feature match area a fair bit throughout the weekend, Paul. And, well, we've seen Carvalho on Azorius aggro, mono white splashing blue for some key sideboard cards there, but my goodness me, Michael Bonder on an entirely different beast here. Nexus of Fate, Wilderness Reclamation, Hydroid Crisis. He's going big.
Right, yeah, and this is now kind of the favored way to build a Nexus of Fate deck, just going straight 2 colors, blue-green, more card draw, more streamlined, and with Wilderness Reclamation, you don't really need that additional way to untap your lands into Fairy that it had in the past. Now, Marcio did just cast the Conclave Tribunal on a Wilderness Reclamation. However, Michael has a second copy. One thing to note, though, that's kind of had this deck evolve is the fact that it doesn't really play the 7 to 8 copies of fog effects or spells that prevent all combat damage. It only plays 4 root snares now in favor of more card draws. And there are a few copies of root snares in the graveyard already. So at this point, it's really just, can Michael do his thing? Because Marcio basically has what looks very close to a lethal attack every single turn. So Michael does need to basically start chaining together some Nexus of Fates with card draw effects, flipped Search for Escanta, things of that nature to be able to win. But, I mean, he's at 10, and he does have a ton of mana on the battlefield, and it looks like he's about to crack a Memorial to Genius here to continue looking for cards.
By the way that it sounds here to me, I'm getting the inside scoop here, Paul, and it seems like Bonder actually does have a couple of extra turns banked up as well. So we're going to see Hydroid Krasis deployed, drawing a couple of cards, making a big old Hydra Jellyfish Beast Sand Warrior Coward. I don't know what it is. In any case, it's enormous, and it's going to dominate this battlefield. And we'll see if Carvalho is really even in this one. Bonder is playing a deck, this Simic Nexus deck. It is a combo list.
Right.
It is. It doesn't look like one, doesn't play like one, but it is. You get your Nexus of Fate loop going, you get Wilderness Reclamation going, and your opponent is just kind of locked out in the same way that they would be, in any other combo list that wins the game on the spot. It's just that they're winning the game on the spot is very different to something like, say, Splinter Twin, which wins it actually literally on the spot. You've still got to go through the motions playing this deck.
This is kind of the nature of combo decks, where, since it attacks the game at a completely different angle, many decks are not really positioned to be able to fight against this deck, at least in game ones, right? But once you go into the sideboard, then you have the option of bringing in cards like Negate, Duress, Disenchant effects for the Wilderness Reclamation to have a better chance.
And we call these lists, we call them Game 1 decks, right? Because they can win Game 1 a lot of, like a broad proportion of the time, and then they eat it to sideboard cards. But in this situation here, Bonder now with 2 Wilderness Reclamations, I mean, what is his percent to win this game? Like 99?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I would say that it's probably close to 100%, because he's got multiple...
He's got another Hydroid Krasis.
That's another one with the Reclamation.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness.
Nexus of Fates on the stack, and now Marcio's attacks aren't even lethal anymore.
Yeah.
And he's going to be able to close out the game
very,
very shortly.
This is fantastic. I mean, this is what it looks like, right? This is the Nexus of Fate deck going off. I love it's a lot more proactive than it used to be with Teferi. Now it does end the game quickly with Hydroid Krasis. And for that reason, I think it has a much more, it's got a better spot in Standard at the moment. It's not this sort of blasted hellscape deck that we used to think it was now. Because it's proactive. It plays an honest game of Magic. It's got real vulnerabilities to sideboard cards, as we've seen. But right now, Bonder is just living in magical Christmas land. I don't know when his inauguration as mayor is, but I tell you what, he's looking forward to having that gold chain hung around his neck because he is firing on all cylinders here. We're going to see another copy of Nexus of Fate. Marcio Carvalho, my friend, you've got to have had enough. And they're going to hit the sideboard. That is that. Bonder wraps up game number 1. Smiles all around in the feature match area. We head back to Table A with... William Huey Jensen, the MPL player and Hall of Famer, facing off against Alex Majlaton. We saw Jensen's mono-blue list really not getting it done against the mono-red list, or technically speaking, Gruul list of Majlaton here. Let's see if things are any different, Paul, post-board. Siren Storm Tamer immediately eats a shock. That's a great piece of interaction there for Majlaton, who needs to keep the board nice and clear. But a Surge Mare is a great blocker here for mono-blue.
Absolutely. The really important thing about the Surge Mare, especially in a matchup like this, is the fact that most of the red, the most damage a red removal spell will do, often from this deck, is 4 from sideboarded Lava Coils. And Surge Mare is able to dodge that. So this is actually it's a great blocker. And on top of that, it's actually a pretty decent target to put Curious Obsession on as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's just so massive. So now, William Jensen has access to creatures that can kind of stymie the ground forces while being able to try to finish the game with his flyer. So the access to Surge Mare is really, really big for this matchup. And on top of that, I mean, I'm only assuming very likely William Jensen has the exact same list as Reed Duke. And, he's going to also have other strong cards to bring in this matchup. But I think Surge Mare, by far, is the most important card here.
And an unimpressive turn 3 here for Majlaton as he casts Light Up the Stage for full price. The electricity bill is rather high, it would seem, this time for Majlaton. We move back to Jensen now. His hand looks decent enough, although lacking in land. So we'll see what his next move is here. This Surge Mare holding down the fort, hoping to avoid any bout of equine flu that would remove it as a very potent blocker indeed. And the other thing about this card is in the later stages of the game, as you mentioned, it hits really hard.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, this blue deck is also kind of prone to flooding.
Yeah.
And at the late stages of the game, you can actually use this, and the Surge Mare, if you somehow manage to stabilize, it can win the game by itself.
Oh yeah. It slices, it dices, it does it all. And a Merfolk Trickster now for Jensen as well. See what Majlaton's response is there.
And it looks like this is an upkeep effect. And if Alex Majlaton does let this resolve, then if Alex Majlaton plays any red spells this turn, the Runaway Steamkin won't actually have any counters placed on it, at least for the duration of this turn. And
I mean, the attack from the Steamkin Runaway isn't exactly what Jensen is worried about, so the tapping isn't the most relevant part, but for sure, the engine-like quality of Runaway Steamkin, especially in conjunction with cards like Light Up the Stage, especially in conjunction with cards like Experimental Frenzy, and it may not look like much, but Jensen's use of the Merfolk Trickster there was actually quite a significant speed bump for Majlaton.
Right. And now Jensen just really wants to find a land here, but it looks like another Entrancing Melody, and Alex too, he's also kind of coming off with a rather anemic start here. He got his Runaway Steamkin tapped, but he didn't follow that up with another creature. Instead, he just chose to play another Light Up the Stage.
Another rubbish divination.
Right, and it's getting kind of awkward because he wasn't even able to cash in on that the Collision Colossus because William Jensen actually doesn't have any flyers on the battlefield.
So, we see now an Essence Capture on targeting that copy of Runaway Steamkin. And that's going to beef up the Surge Mare, which I really like. A 1/6 blocker. How is Red ever dealing with that?
It's going to be extremely difficult. Alex is going to need to string together multiple removal spells to get it done.
And just the fact that it now holds off with those, all things like Viashino Pyromancer with impunity. I mean, this is a great position for Jensen here. Lava Coil? Where's that one going?
Yeah, it is, however, still very important for William to be able to find lands. Otherwise, Alex can just, basically go wide and win that way.
All right. Well, I'm sure for Jensen's sake, he'll be hoping to find some more lands. So, this is all right. So here we have Majlaton using a Lava Coil.
So he is looking to 2-for-1 himself here, just to get that Surge Mare off the battlefield. That's how big.
Giving up a fair bit of value from that Runaway Steamkin as well, having to remove those counters. Here's another Light Up the Stage.
Okay.
So there is a Lava Coil in hand here for Majlaton. So a Lightning Strike. So he will be able to remove that Surge Mare, you would think.
Right.
There it is.
So he's going to use that Lightning Strike because William Jensen did not block here. He only wants to block if he has access to a protection spell for that Surge Mare, as he doesn't want to just lose to just blocking in something like a Lightning Strike as well.
So a tidy 2-for-1 there for Jensen. Majlaton has hit those copies of Light Up the Stage, however, so he's not too worried about being behind on cards. Let's see what Jensen's next move is. He does need a land, and Paul, I don't think he's found one. In comes the Merfolk Trickster, and Jensen kind of starting to run out of options here.
Yeah, and Jensen going for the same play that he did a couple of turns ago by trying to kind of slow down the Steamkin. If Alex Majlaton does not play a spell, then he can't get the counter on the Steamkin, and then he can't just empty out his hand because, of course, once the Steamkin gets 3 counters, you can cast those in for 3 red mana.
So another Steamkin now coming out of exile thanks to the previously cast copy of Light Up the Stage. You see a Collision Colossus still there in exile. I don't think that one's going to get too much of a run this time around.
I will say, so that's the one thing that I wanted to talk about here, where Collision Colossus, normally you would think that's a very strong sideboard card against decks with a bunch of flyers. However, it doesn't combo very well with a card like Light Up the Stage because it's a little bit more reactive, right?
Yeah, it's conditional.
Right. Whereas when you're playing burn spells that go that can target anything. For example, if you hit a shock, if you hit a lightning strike, you can still just fire those off and use it on your opponents. But he's now done this twice where he actually revealed Collision Colossus and had no targets.
So we're exiling that Surge Mare. Jensen, of course, it was targeted by a Lava Coil, and so it did need to go to exile after dying. Missed that one there. But you're absolutely right, Paul, in the fact that you do lose some points with a card like Light Up the Stage when you're exiling conditional cards to it. If you can't just fire off those cards for value, even if it isn't the best use of the cards, just chucking a shock up at the scone there or something like that, or toasting them with a lightning strike, you do lose a bit of value.
Yeah. Now, William Jensen is in a lot of trouble. I mean, I know he's winning the race there. If you look, he's at 17 and Alex is at 8. However, there's 2 runaway Steamkins on the battlefield, and with those on the battlefield, I mean, Alex can just dump out his entire hand this turn.
It's really not difficult to get the party started when you've got multiple Steamkins, especially if there's something like an Experimental Frenzy. But even with the hand that Majlaton has, he's looking to be in fine shape here as we see Light Up the Stage once again. I mean, pop those sunglasses on, ladies and gentlemen, because I don't know how bright this stage is now. This is the 4th time it's been lit up.
Look at this. Okay, and then now Alex has access to 2 mana, but potentially even 6. He hit a land here as well, so he's going to be able to play this Pyromancer. I don't think he's going to want to fire off. I don't think he's going to want to remove counters on the Runaway Steamkin with the 3 counters. So he's just going to use the mana remaining that he had because he can. Because the Viashino Pyromancer is a wizard, he can just play the the Wizard's Lightning here
as a lightning
for 1 mana. And now he's going to use it. And basically, he wants to use all of his instant sorceries or removal spells before William Jensen has the opportunity to untap to play around cards like Negate, Spell Pierce, or Dive Down.
And that's exactly what he does here as we go back to Jensen, who untaps, finds a Terramander and a Siren Storm Tamer. Are you ready for a Riley Knight big call? RKBC? This one's gone. This one's in the bag. Majlaton's got it. He's got it. There's not. We said before, Mono Blue just doesn't have good catch-up mechanisms. They don't play well from behind, and this is a position here where William Jensen is treading water and running out of time. He hasn't found his 3rd land. He hasn't been able to enact the game plan that this deck wants to enact, and Majlaton is sitting pretty. Jensen's on 4. He's got 2 copies of Runaway Steamkin, both of which are lethal. And if you can draw something like an Experimental Frenzy, this one's in the bag.
Right. Also, keep in mind, this is a mono-red deck. This deck's chock full of burn spells, right?
Yeah.
So it's just there's just so few cards that are going to be irrelevant at this point in the game for Alex Majlaton outside of lands.
So here, Majlaton. Very, very close indeed to wrapping this one up, putting it in the books. And we'll see if Jensen can do anything to try to circumvent that here.
Yeah, and so going into, I think, this Mythic Championship, I just want to talk about how I think many of the top players think Mono Blue, very, very strong deck. However, it is good against, I believe, everything in the field, but I do think it is a dog against the mono red and mono white decks.
Dive down to save the Terramander here, Paul, as Goblin Chainwhirler comes down. A big attack with both of these lethal runaway Steamkins. Jensen on the chump block, the double chump here. Can he find what he needs? No, he cannot. And Alex Majlaton powers on to 10 and 3. Still in the conversation for top 8, and commiserations to old mate Huey, of course, as he goes down swinging at now 9 and 4. Almost certainly knocked out of top 8 contention, but we'll see exactly how things go for him over the course of the tournament. We can jump back to one of our other tables here, Marcio Carvalho and Michael Bonda. We checked in with them before, Paul. We saw that Marcio Carvalho, of course, on mono white or white blue, a slight blue splash there for him. But it is Michael Bonda's list that is really going to turn some heads this time around. Wilderness Reclamation, Nexus of Fate, getting it done with the updated version of this combo-like extra turns deck here.
Right. Basically, what this deck is looking to do is get a bunch of lands on the battlefield, put it in with, ramp it out with Growth Spiral, get that Wilderness Reclamation onto the battlefield so that you can really start casting multiple spells. This deck is truly built to fully utilize the power of Wilderness Reclamation. Cards like Chemist's Insight, or tap 4 mana, float the mana, untap, tap it again so that you could cast Nexus of Fate. And on top of that, cards like Search for Azcanta, where you can activate Search for Azcanta multiple times in a row. I mean,
even Memorial to Genius.
Exactly.
I'm loving that.
Yeah, and I've even seen lists with like singular copies of Arch of Araska, just to have an additional way to use all the mana that you basically can generate out of Wilderness Reclamation.
We've seen decks like this in the past. Typically, they're called Turbo Fog lists because they involve cards like Fog. I mean, in this situation, it's Root Snare instead, which costs 2 rather than 1. But the turbo element of it is really, yeah, trying to draw as many cards as possible. In the past, it's been done with cards like Rites of Flourishing, for example. But one of the things that's so interesting about this Nexus of Fate list is that, especially now, with cards like Hydroid Krasis, with cards like Wilderness Reclamation, it gets to a point, Paul, where it effectively goes off in the same way as a combo deck would. And from that point onwards, your opponent's never really in the game, even though you have to win over the course of maybe 3 to 4 to 5 extra turns. But you get to a point where, yeah, the game is over, even if it doesn't look it.
Yeah, you get to the point where you're just extremely far ahead on cards. And you know, the only win conditions here are the 2 copies of Hydroid Krasis. But the thing is, if you are in a situation where you're afraid that your opponent might have a removal spell, well, then you can just kind of sit on the second one, wait to get to a point where you can sculpt your hand and have multiple Sinister Sabotages in your hand so that you can actually protect the Hydroid Krasis. And, you know, this deck is able to actually close out once it gets going because of the addition of those Hydroid Krasis.
Yeah, and that's a really important thing. And we see them replace Teferi as a win condition in these lists because Teferi was very slow and lumbering and required a third color. And as a result, Hydroid Krasis is kind of filling that gap and enabling a much more proactive game plan, which I like. We are, of course, in post-board games here between these two players, and I think it's really important to point out the sideboard cards in the Simic list now, as we see Michael Bonda mulliganing here. Extra threat density, Nezahal, Incubation Druid, a kind of a threat, I suppose, especially with Adapt, Hydroid Krasis, but really importantly, Biogenic Ooze. This is the card that punishes removal light opponents post-board.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, as far as this matchup goes, I think, you know, since it truly is kind of a race in terms of how you get people to set up, I think there's a decent chance that you're going to see some of those mana creatures come in. On top of that, you know, Marcio, given that he's playing Azorius aggro, very likely has some combination of, you know, negate, Disdainful Stroke, cards like that. And if you do have that, then, you know, you might want to actually have a slightly more proactive strategy. And as you mentioned, something like a Biogenic Ooze could also come in.
And we see Atsakan Archer also having been brought in as a great piece of interaction against the various X1s in this aggressive deck. And I really like the post-board plan of this Simic list. It's proactive. It's attempting to really reposition itself post-board, and we'll see exactly how that works out for Bonda now. As Carvalho kicks things off with a copy of Legion's Landing, that vampire already getting busy, followed up with the 1-2 punch of Adanto Vanguard. Bonda, just an opt for him on turn 2, but now, turn 3, here's the Atsakan Archer.
What's really funny about this is, you know, oh, sorry. I thought the Atsakan Archer actually pinged flyers. It actually just fights.
So did I.
It just fights anything.
It fights anything.
It fights anything.
So I was at the German testing halls.
Right.
And my good friend Toralf Severin was playing Simic. You'll be unsurprised to learn he did not make day 2. But he was playing this, and I was like, dude, how afraid of flyers are you that you're playing 3 copies of the Archer in your sideboard? He's like, what do you mean? He's like, it kills X1s. I'm like, yeah, but like, okay, fine, it kills Terramander. He's like, no, it kills X1s. I'm like,
right.
Oh, just because it's got a bow. It turns out, Paul, you can aim a bow downwards.
Right. And look at this. I mean, it is completely shutting down Marcio's attack here. But he does now have the Loxodon. So now with the Loxodon in play, both the Adanto Vanguard and the Loxodon can attack through the Atsakan Archer. And so now Michael's going to actually have to find, you know, a way to, hopefully, this Atsakan Archer's bought him enough time to actually start kind of going through the motions in terms of trying to establish control of this game.
And that's the really important part, right, is the fact that the Atsakan Archer did gain, what, like 5 life, 6 life perhaps? And here, now we're in root snare territory. Now we're at a point where Bonda is going to want to start buffering his life total as much as possible, protecting that life total so he can move towards the Reclamation plus Nexus late game plan that wins this deck Games of Magic.
Yeah, and you know, part of the reason why you have seen these aggressive white decks, instead of, you know, in the past, you saw it with a red splash, right? You saw it with, you know, heroic reinforcements, Aurelia cards like that. But, you know, honestly, one of the biggest weaknesses with this type of strategy is the lack of interaction, right, after sideboard. So having access to negate really shores up a lot of these really difficult matchups, right? This deck is weak to sweepers, right? Well, negate solves that. This deck is weak to a deck looking to do degenerate turbo fog-like things. Well, negate also solves that. So I think just Hallowed Fountain was the missing piece for this deck to really give it more of a chance in a lot of these more tricky, difficult matchups.
Yeah, just open up its aperture a little bit in order so it can sort of rumble and tumble against more of the decks in the format. Michael Bonda has managed to shoot another Sky Marcher Aspirant out of the sky here with his Atsakan Archer, but things have just gone from bad to worse here as another Vampire enters the fray and another big attack here from Carvalho, and a double block with the Atsakan Archer is going to remove one of them at least. But here is a Root Snare from Bonda, but a Spell Pierce from Carvalho is going to ruin the day for the Dane here. And the Portuguese Magic Pro League member slams down a History of Benalia, going from strength to strength here, Paul, and Michael Bonda is in hot water.
Right, and keep in mind, this is a blue-green deck. There are no sweepers.
No. Oh, look at this.
Look
a Root
at
Snare as well is met by a negate. Carvalho has all the answers, and he improves to 12-1. Michael Bonda had a hand pull that was incredibly well set up to do what it needed to do against mono white, but it's not mono white. It's blue. Hallowed Fountain, enabling Spell Pierce, enabling negate. You identified these cards as critically important for the mono white deck, and we have just seen why.
Yeah, those are the cards that you need to be able to fight a deck like the Wilderness Reclamation deck. And Marcio drew it, and now Marcio is sitting at 12-1. He's very, very close.
Yeah.
He just needs to win one more.
It's looking real good.
But at the same time, if he loses two, he might even be able to draw into the top 8.
It's looking really, really good for him.
Look at that! Look at that side of relief, because this was an extremely important match, because there is a very, very high chance that Marcio will make the top 8 of this Mythic Championship.
Well, we'll see how things go for him, but of course, don't count out Michael Bonda. I have to say that they say it's better to be lucky than be good. Michael Bonda has certainly been both of those things today in the feature match area. We've kept a close eye on him, and so I'm not counting him out just yet. His blood's running high, and I'm expecting big things from this young Dane. We'll see how fortune favours him as we head towards the top 8. Both of these players in with a real sniff at it, Paul. One of the points that we've seen as we prepare some extra match coverage for you around the world at home, one of the things that we have seen throughout this weekend is a great diversity of decks in Standard. I think more than we're used to, I would say, in Standard. A lot of decks, not just in terms of card choice, in terms of archetype choice and that sort of stuff, but generally all facets, aggro, combo, control, mid-range, are really well represented across a range of archetypes.
Not only that, there's even tempo, which we haven't had in a
true.
while, right? We now have access to the mono blue decks. There's a Spells Matters deck. There's just all kinds of things for all kinds of different people. And even coming into this tournament, I was talking with some members of some members on the members on Luis's team, and I was asking, hey, what are some of the decks that your team is playing? He's like, well, nobody's really all on the same deck, and I could just guess what decks people were going to play based on their kind of predispositions. If I look at somebody like Matt Nass, I would just be able to peg him on a Reclamation deck, right? Because he likes playing combo decks. And everybody just kind of settled into their lanes. They're like, you know what? This is the type of deck that I like playing. I don't think any one strategy is that much stronger than the other. So I'm just going to play the one that makes the most. I'm just going to play the one that's just makes me the most comfortable.
Let's get into this match here on your screens, ladies and gentlemen. Atsuki Kihara versus Oliver Tamaiko here. We've got Esper Control facing off against Simic Nexus. So let's get stuck in between these two players, see how things go for them as we round out our coverage of this round here at Mythic Championship #1 coming your way from Cleveland. Atsuki Kihara from Japan, as you can see on your screen on Team Final Last Samurai. And he's going to kick things off with a Thought Erasure. Tamaiko kicking off casting an opt-in response. And once again, Simic Nexus getting it done here for Tamaiko. We haven't seen too much of it throughout the weekend so far, but the power level of the deck is really undeniable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do remember there was an interview with Rob Pisano, who was undefeated after day 1, saying that he felt that the Simic Nexus matchup was one of his worst matchups. Of course, Atsuki Kihara could have a slightly different build of Esper Control, but that's just the kind of overall feeling that he had. I think because you have so much removal that you play game 1, you might not even be able to sideboard all of those cards out.
Yeah, that's true.
On top of that, the Simic Nexus deck is just all card draw spells. So even if you draw a bunch of Thought Erasures and Duresses, a singular Chemister's Insight can just ruin your day.
They can just come right back from it, that's right. And when you've got, the idea of playing a control deck is to pull ahead on cards, not only literally with cards like Chemist's Insight, but also in a virtual sense because they will have dead removal spells, right? Simic Nexus doesn't have that problem. They don't have removal in the same way that most decks do. On top of that, they're playing main deck counterspells as well. It's a nightmare matchup for control. And Tomaiko's off to a great start with a search for Azcanta after that Thought Erasure picks apart his hand. But, Kihara on the plan B. Creatures out of the board, and this is trouble for Tomaiko.
That is huge. I don't know if Tomaiko, brought in something like the Atsukin Archer to be able to deal with this Thief of Sanity, but this Thief of Sanity can run away with the game.
And we're going to see that start right here and right now. Stealing cards off the top of the library. Kihara getting it done with his little Windrake with upside. And this is an important and a very prescient post-board plan here for Kihara, because this is the way as he takes a Nexus of Fate out of Tomaiko's deck. This is the way for Esper to turn this matchup around.
Absolutely. I think this is the correct way to build a sideboard against specifically decks like the Simic Nexus deck, because you're not going to be able to outcard them, right? You're not going to be able to beat them just by having just a bunch of negates and card draw out of your sideboard, because frankly, they just have more card draw and just the same amount of counterspells. You need to be proactive. So this plan of having Duresses and Thought Erasures into Thief of Sanity is what you need to actually beat the Simic Nexus deck.
Kihara is not mucking around when it comes to post-board creatures as well, Paul, as we see 4 Thief of Sanity, 3 Hostage Taker, and 2 Lyra Dawnbringer. So definitely a very potent post-board plan here for Kihara. Looks like it is Thief of Sanity down. The days of the Thief are numbered indeed by the Crowl Harpooner shooting it out of the sky. And Tomaiko now eating a Mortify, his search for Azcanta. Unsuccessful, ultimately. Those explorers lost out in the wilderness. No lands for Tomaiko is going to be a real issue for him. Kihara is in a position to pull further ahead now.
He is. However, Oliver was able to answer that Thief of Sanity, because if that connected, 1 or 2 more times, the game would have been very, very close to over.
So now, here's a Lyra Dawnbringer from Kihara, and that's going to turn the screws on Tomaiko as well. Oh, no, it's not. Excuse me. I spoke too soon. Look at that.
Blue-green control.
The Singleton Crushing Canopy is just like, get that out of here. The dawn will not be brung today.
Wow, and look at this.
And a Wilderness Reclamation
Oliver is
as well.
fighting back. I mean, keep in mind, Kihara used the Thought Erasure and knew exactly what Oliver had, and Oliver just has naturally drawn answers to the flyers that Atsuki was looking to deploy.
So he's found exactly what he needs here. Kihara now getting it done with a Khan, Scion of Urza. No response now from Tomaiko, who is...
that's a +1 if I've seen one.
Oh, hello. Look at this. Pick your poison here for Tomaiko. Is it going to be Teferi, or is it going to be the Thief of Sanity? I mean, either way, it is a choice between a rock and or a hard place here for Tomaiko, who is sitting on double Nexus of Fate and a Chemist's Insight. One of which you're going to see fired off right now. Draw 2 fresh cards here for the American youngster. Played at the World Magic Cup as part of Team USA a couple of years ago. I believe he's the national champion as well for the red, white, and blue.
Yes.
And Kihara deploys the Thief of Sanity, so he's on the board. Let's see what Tomaiko's next move is. As you can see in hand, another Wilderness Reclamation. And this is going to enable, ladies and gentlemen, look at this. Nexus of Fate #1 here for Tomaiko. We know he's going to be able to line up another one. Look, he's not out of the woods yet, but he can see the sunlight filtering through the trees, and he's going to be running at that forest border full tilt. So here we go.
And look at this. He even drew another Harpooner to deal with that Thief of Sanity. Now he has access to so much mana. If he finds a land, that's just 2 more mana sources. He's got access to 12 mana at this point. He's got that Chemist's Insight in Graveyard and an extra Nexus of Fate in hand.
So 3 Wilderness Reclamation?
Is that a third one?
3 Wilderness Reclamation? Surely not.
Okay, no, he's going to start off with the Chemist's Insight. Probably doesn't really need to play the third one this turn, so he probably just wants to continue smoothing out his draw, looking for more Chemist's Insights or search for Azcantas.
So, all the same, we are going to be able to see that Nexus of Fate get cast.
One in the pool,
yep.
6 in the pool, 7. And there it is.
Another Nexus of Fate now for Oliver Tomaiko, who is, again, running full tilt here for the border of that forest, trying to get himself out of the woods here. He's got to deal with that Thief of Sanity, but he does have the tool in the form of Crowl Harpooner. Let's not forget that. This one, she's a close one, huh? Hard to call.
It's close. If Oliver really just needs to find another card draw effect here, something like a Hydroid Crisis or another Chemist's Insight would actually be ideal because he doesn't actually have a ton of mana in play for the Hydroid Crisis. So Chemist's Insight would be great because he's able to float mana and cast those things at instant speed. All
right, what's he found here? Let's have a look. As Tomoko takes another extra turn, draws, finds an opt. Okay.
Yeah, and now it looks like he might have been able to string together enough cards. He's got the Harpooner for the Thief of Sanity, doesn't need to fire it off yet. Just wants to continue digging for Nexus of Fates, more lands, more card draw. It's possible Atsuki just doesn't get another turn this game.
Very possible indeed, given the high concentration of card draw effects in the Simic Nexus list. They are able to really burn through their deck at a rate of knots. Opt is part of that puzzle. Chemist's Insight. We, of course, have Memorial to Genius, Arch of Erazka. There's all sorts of ways. Let's not forget the headline of Standard, the biggest, baddest thumper there is in the form of Hydroid Crisis.
Oh, and he found a search that was huge.
All right, so this means now that untapping with a search for Azcanta is going to be able to flip it, but Kihara gets another turn.
All right, that is big. Kihara getting another turn is big. I think there's a good chance that Kihara is going to look to get that Teferi and use the minus on the search because given that Oliver has passed his turn, there could be a chance that Oliver is just out of gas right now and is looking to dig. And the moment he flips that search for Azcanta, he can start going to town. 3
activations of search for Azcanta return?
Oh, yeah.
Don't mind if I do, Paul.
Right.
Don't mind if I do.
So Atsuki needs to go for that search to try to find more time to try to come back in this game.
Yep, so Teferi walks into the government office and says, that search expedition, cancel it. We're out of money. The budget is too tight. And the search is cancelled as a result. Burke and Wills come back empty-handed.
Okay, and yeah, Oliver really is kind of out of gas. Taking a look at his hand, it's just Spell Pierce Reclamation.
So, Reclamation number 3?
Number 3.
Reclamation number 3?
Might as well.
Might as well. Hey, it does cost an effective 1 mana, or 0 mana now, with a Memorial to Genius, I should say, cast here, or played. And that means that it gets untapped. Right. And then you can activate it.
Yeah, he has all the mana in the world. So
next level plays.
2 in the mana pool, so that's 1 Reclamation.
Now, in response to tapping and untapping, in response to all of these reclamation triggers, we're going to see Tomoko tap and untap all these lands. And I would say the last time they're going to be untapped, yes, indeed. We'll see the Memorial to Genius finds a Nexus. No, he doesn't.
Nope, he drew the search that was placed on top, but he does, I think, find a Sinister Sabotage.
All right, in addition to that Spell Pierce that's in hand.
Yeah, which is very, very big. So now he's going to be able to protect that search for Azcanta because I think, honestly, Oliver just needs to get that search for Azcanta to flip. If he can manage to do that, he will be able to take over.
Oh, no. Look at this. Tomoko has had a Khan and an Unmoored Ego flipped to the Khan, the Sign of Urza. He's got to respect that card. He has to respect Unmoored Ego. This card single-handedly ruins Tomoko's plan. I mean, he does have the counterspells in order to go up against it, Paul, but he cannot rest easy when that card is out and about.
Right, and now this Unmoored Ego can be played next turn. Also, do we know what card he took with that first hit off the Thief of Sanity?
Nexus of Fate.
Okay.
There's a Nexus, yeah, that upside down card, that face down card you can see just above Kihara's list there, deck there, that is a Nexus of Fate. So Kihara has that one on tap, ready to fire off at a moment's notice here. And in hand here as well for Kihara. He does have a Khan, Sign of Urza. He's playing those other 2 very close to his figurative chest, I have to say. One of them is a Hallowed Fountain.
Oh, and I think he's going for the Nexus of Fate.
But he's going to get wrecked. He's going to get absolutely ruined.
No,
he's not, because of the Teferi.
Right, there's a Teferi trigger, so he smartly pays 2 life.
Next level plays.
For this Nexus of Fate.
Next level plays with Atsuki Kihara playing around Spell Pierce like an absolute champion and forcing through that Nexus, even with Tomoko holding the Spell Pierce in hand. What a turnaround.
So now Atsuki is going to get that Unmoored Ego, and he's going to remove the Nexus of Fates from Oliver Tomoko's deck.
And then Oliver Tomoko isn't playing Simic Nexus anymore. He's just playing Simic.
Yeah, I mean, he's playing Simic mana and good cards.
He's playing Simic end step triggers. This is horrific.
Wow.
So
Okay.
Spell Pierce and Search for Azcanta in the hand of Oliver Tomiko aren't going to be good enough to go up against this Unmoored Ego, and Tomiko's deck has had the guts ripped out of it here by Unmoored Ego. Away go those copies of Nexus of Fate. I think it looks like Kihara is searching for that 4th copy here and having a good old look at what Tomiko was working with. It's going to be a long and winding road, and it's all uphill here for Tomiko.
Yeah, and when you play a card like Unmoored Ego in your sideboard,
Yeah.
that's kind of the sign of, you know what? I've had enough.
Yeah.
I am not going to lose to this deck anymore. I'm going to put some copies of this in my sideboard, and if I play against the Nexus deck, I'm going to have my trump card in Unmoored Ego.
It's not
because
so
it's
much
a very valuable slot, right? Your sideboard is
Yeah.
super valuable, and it only really comes in against one deck.
This. I mean, it's. I was going to say it's a silver bullet. It's not a silver bullet. It's like a silver rocket-propelled grenade. It does that much damage to the Simic Nexus deck. And now Tomiko is, again, just on the mono end-step triggers plan. He doesn't have a way to really leverage this game and rest it under his control. I don't know what his plan is here.
Oh, wow, and Atsuki also found an Absorb here, which is really important because Oliver, the way he comes back in this game is to get ahead on cards with that Search for Azcanta. So, yeah, Atsuki now pulling ahead with both a Karn and a Teferi on the battlefield with an Unmoored Ego, exiling all the Nexus of Fates in Oliver's deck.
Are you ready for another RKBC? Another Riley Knight big call? Kihara's got it. He's got it. I've never been wrong. I've never been wrong, Paul. I've never been wrong.
Given the life totals, I think there is still a slight chance. For example, if Oliver just naturally draws in Arch of Araska, that's 3 cards a turn.
All right.
He might be able to keep up, right?
Okay, all right. Well, let's see. Let's see how things go. But, I mean, Khan can start spewing out golems at some point or another. Teferi's ticking ever closer towards Ultimate. Tomiko is playing a deck that is threat light. He needs Biogenic Ooze. He needs some cards that are really going to put some pressure on Murmuring Mystic out of the board as well. Otherwise, Kihara is just going to run roughshod over the top of him here as Khan goes up to 7. The party don't stop here for Kihara's Planeswalkers. He's drawing a billion cards a turn, especially now with the Search for Azcanta being flipped, the Sunken Ruin. What treasures do you yet hold, my friend?
There you go. There's a Thought Erasure. And Kihara also not firing off the Mortify because Oliver just has all the mana in the world already. So he's saving that Mortify in case Oliver does draw something like a Search for Azcanta.
Another search or something like that. Let's check back in with the young American. He finds a land, passes, plays the turn and passes. Still got that that chocolate teapot of a Spell Pierce in hand. It has done nothing. It's about as useful as an ejector seat in a helicopter, I have to say here. Kihara with a full grip, 2 active Planeswalkers. RKBC, this one's in the bag, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, there goes, finally, that Spell Pierce. I mean, you just cast it, right?
Right.
You just cast it.
Yeah,
You just cast it.
It doesn't really matter, but yeah, at this point, the writing's kind of on the wall.
Oh,
and,
mate, it's smeared across there in great glaring red letters like the life of Brian here. And right now, it is not the Romans, but it is Oliver Tomiko that is being told to go home because this is a beating of another kind entirely. Opt off the top here.
Keep in mind, however, we do have Hydroid Krasis still as an option for Oliver. He has 3 copies of it in his deck.
Another Wilderness Reclamation. It's Tron of a different kind that's been assembled here for Tomiko. I don't know how much mana he has available to him each turn, but he doesn't have anything to do with it. Unfortunately, it doesn't work. It's not a great combo with the Krasis, Paul, but
right.
all the same, it's pretty cool to see 4 copies out there.
Yeah, it does give him a source of uncounterable card draw. So, for example, if I'm Atsuki and I draw my other copy of Unmoored Ego, I'm going to name the Hydroid Krasis. Because if you name the Hydroid Krasis, you have effectively locked up the game. Because given the counterspells in Atsuki's hand, the game is over. I mean, the game is already effectively over, but with the Hydroid Krasis, Oliver has maybe a 1% chance to come back into the game.
Here's another a Thief of Sanity now, and look at this, an embarrassment of riches here for Kihara, sacrificing a 9 loyalty Khan in order to play a second one. That's going to put Lyra back in his hand, of course, with a silver counter on it from the Exile Zone into the hand, onto the battlefield, and this one is drawing ever closer, Paul, to a swift and vicious end here for Oliver Tomiko. Kihara firing on all cylinders, and I don't think it'll be too long before this one is in the books. Memorial to Genius, tap, untap. Let's sacrifice, see if we can find something. But no, sir. And a very convincing win for Atsuki Kihara. And Paul, we mentioned that the Esper matchup isn't a great one, but Kihara had the tools he needed to hustle and bustle.
Right. I mean, again, earlier, Rob Pisano alluded to the fact that this is an extremely poor matchup. So as a result, he really wanted like additional tools to be able to win this matchup. And that's why he had that unmoored ego in his sideboard, along with the Thief of Sanity and even more disruption. It looks like his entire sideboard was kind of dedicated to basically just beating both this and other control matchups.
I like looking at his sideboard: Thief of Sanity, Hostage Taker, Duress, unmoored ego, Lyra Dawnbringer. The one
he brought
card,
in his entire sideboard.
The one card I don't think he brought in was his single copy of the Eldest Reborn, a 14-card sideboard. Not too bad there for that one. But hey, look, it paid dividends for the Japanese superstar there, so congratulations to him on that game win. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to a break. We're going to be back live from Cleveland before very much longer. We'll be checking in with the guys over in the desk, so stick around for that. But right now, that is the end of our coverage for Standard of this round. Thanks so much for sticking with us. We'll see you back here live in Cleveland after this.
Welcome back to the news desk. As we head towards the end of round 13, 3 rounds to go. Now's a good time to remind you that the 4th loss is generally fatal for your chances of making the top 8. Someone may sneak in at 12-4, but generally 12 wins, 3 losses and a draw, 37 match points is enough for the top 8, and certainly 13 wins and 3 losses, 39 points, does get you in to the top 8, which means that Marcio Carvalho, who's at 12-1 from the MPL, of course, he is now in the box seat to claim the first of the 8 slots in the top 8 for tomorrow. Because realistically, at any point, any single point where he gets a draw, intentional or otherwise, would be enough, probably, to put him into the top 8. So congratulations to him. Not 100% done deal. Might lose 3 times, might finish 10th, who knows. But nonetheless, very likely Marcio Carvalho in great, great shape. Now, Michael Bonder's 11-2. Others at 11-2. Reed Duke, we've been seeing all morning. Yoshihiko Ikawa is up to 11-2. Autumn Burchett of England, yes, is 11-2. And then tons of players on 10-3. We'll look at the leaderboard once the round is settled. But a player who's still in contention is out on the floor. We saw him in feature match action earlier on, defeating William Jensen. Here's Maria Bartholdi with Alex Majlaton.
Hey, I'm in the feature match area with Alex Majlaton, who's currently sitting at 10-3, a great victory in the feature match area last round. But first, I got to ask you, your shorts, it's Cleveland, it's really cold here. What's going on?
Well, I live in a state that has pretty harsh winters, not as bad as the Midwest, so I'm just used to the cold, and I like wearing shorts.
You told me you only wear pants 1 month out of the year. What month is that?
January.
Okay, so we've passed it. All right, so you're playing red aggro at this tournament. Why did you choose that deck?
It was the deck that I hated the least.
Okay, great. So do you think it's particularly well positioned in the metagame? What made it the deck that you hate the least?
I liked it because I was struggling against the aggro decks when I was practicing with Nexus, and I couldn't find a way to make that deck beat them in time, so I decided to just try red again, and I had discarded it earlier because I was losing a lot to Sultai, but then when I started trying it again, I found that the games were a lot closer than they were before, so I thought, let me just try this deck, and I was satisfied enough with the results in practice that I decided to just register it.
So your deck has a couple of really interesting things about it besides, the fact that red is still good. You've got some green cards in your deck in the sideboard. Talk a little bit about those and how useful they are to you in the matchups.
Yeah, originally when I started playing Standard a few weeks ago, I was trying just mono red, and that's when I had set it aside, thought it wasn't good. And then Mark Jacobson came to me with the idea to play a green sideboard for specifically Cindervines and Collision Colossus. Those cards help a lot in some of the matchups that I was a little iffy about. It's really tough to beat a giant Hydroid Krasis, so having a card that can instantly kill that is really good, and even if they don't draw any, you can still just always pump your creature.
All right, so what matchups are you looking to face the rest of the day? What's good for you?
I would love to play nothing but Simic Nexus for the rest of the day. I would settle for mono blue.
All right, you've got a pretty good chance here. You're 10-3, so you've top 8'd 8 Grand Prix in your history. This is your 34th Mythic Championship, but you have yet to break through to the top 8 at a Mythic Championship. What does it feel like to kind of be like, it's not too far away, it's a possibility now?
It's not as exciting as it would have been if it was my, 6th or 7th Mythic Championship, but I'm still kind of getting a little butterflies.
Is there anybody you want to give a shout out to back at home?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I want to give a shout out to Mark Jacobson for working on the deck with me, and I want to give a shout out to my local store, Dice City Games, for putting us up for the team series. They've been awesome throughout this whole thing. Awesome.
Well, you're 10-3. Best of luck to you the rest of the way.
Thanks, Maria.
Well, I can tell you that it's deck tech time now here at the Pro Tour, and 2 people who are about to embark on their last ever deck tech at Mythic Championship. The thing is, only one of them knows it. Here's Brian David Marshall with Shaheen Sarani.